Hey everyone, welcome to 24 Point, where we talk about the tools, techniques, and trials of designing and developing software in a digital agency. I'm Jeff Rock, co-founder of Mobelux, and today I'll be talking to our Director of Design, Chris Lewis, about all things design systems, what they are, why we use them, and how we use them in a team environment.
I am Chris Lewis. I am Director of Design here at Mobelux.
Great. And how long have you been designing professionally?
Let's see. So I started out doing sort of print identity work, moved into doing the digital stuff. It's been about 11 years now, total. And what part of digital design do you really gravitate towards at this point? So I think it's the flexibility of it all. With print, you're working in very fixed mediums, very fixed dimensions. And there's certain things that just aren't possible, right? Like motion isn't possible in print. So I think that aspect of it, of just being sort of alive in a sense and always changing, is really what I'm drawn to.
What part of working in a digital agency would you say is the best part?
Definitely, I think the best part of working in a digital agency is that you are always doing something different. I think it forces you to sort of get embedded into whatever sort of business sector or, type of work that you're doing. It could be a grocery store one day, and it could be working for some fintech company the next. And it's your job to become very familiar with that subject matter so that you can speak to it and design effectively. So definitely the variety of work keeps you sharp on many levels.
You tend to learn a lot about a niche subject sometimes, and then you work on it for a little while, put it down, then work on something completely different. And I found that really speaks to a certain problem-solving mentality. The people that really love it are people that just love problems, right? So on the flip side of that, what's the worst part of working in a digital agency right now?
I think the worst part of working in a digital agency is sometimes, it's better, sometimes it's worse, but it's got to be timeline sometimes. I think because the world that we live in, these problems are getting more complex that need to be solved, and technology is always improving and getting better, and there's more things that are possible. So allowing enough time to establish the true problem that you are solving and knowing that you're going down sort of the right path can be hard when you don't give yourself enough time to really explore all those options. There's probably a better way of saying that.
There's a better way of saying everything.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. So one of the things I want to talk to you about is design systems.
Yeah.
I feel like that's moved the work here further, faster. It's gotten a lot better since the concept was introduced. So what's the point of a design system?
The point of a design system is to have a really succinct, cohesive list that's visual of all the things that you use for the product, right? That could be type styles, buttons, form elements, patterns, things that you use to build the product, right? It's your ingredient list. But the other side of it is also can be principles, right? It's sort of, if we were to bring somebody new onto a project, they could, theoretically come to this system, understand the grids, spacing for things, language that's meant to be used, and the principles for what this thing is meant to do. So holistically, it's kind of a snapshot of everything that we're trying to accomplish in UI, but also from just a service standpoint as well for that product.
Do you think it's helped with the transition from design to development in any way, or is it mostly a design exercise?
Yeah, design systems absolutely help with the development handoff. When I first started doing this stuff, it was a lot of exporting pings, button styles, and things like that. But through Figma and different tools that are accessible now, you're looking at actual inspectable pieces of code, essentially. And so developers can look at that, get a value by hovering on it instead of measuring with like old like tools like Photoshop or whatever it is. So it becomes a lot easier to organize in a single place instead of paging through pings or PDFs or whatever.
Pictures of software.
Yeah, basically.
The worst way. Because a lot of what we had started with, 10, 11 years ago and moved away from is that waterfall design mentality where they're just going to get a picture of the software and it's left up to them to make it. I feel like now they're able to take the design system, and when a simple page needs to get made, they're not coming back to design necessarily for every single view that needs to be made. They can construct pages that maybe don't have as much marketing value, or it's just something that needs to be made, in the design system has really helped them do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think about the amount of time I spent early in my career agonizing over like a settings view, right? Which is like, who cares? It's a settings view, but it needs to be there and it needs to look like the rest of the thing. But it's a lot easier to say, well, in this view, you need to be able to change these fields, right? And if they have just a system in terms of, okay, well, I know that this is what the input looks like. I know that they should be spaced this far apart. It's even if they have to go and just kind of build something and have a designer or somebody else, product manager, look at it and assess like, okay, yeah, this is good. It moves the needle and the sort of timeline on that thing so far forward that it's just so much more efficient and effective.
On a product level, what do you think has been the most complex, largest project that utilizes the design system here?
So we've worked on a few. I think a really big one is Colonial Williamsburg. That's probably the biggest system that we've had, just because we were coming from a place of, they had a website when they came to us and it was pretty good, right? Like it was doing a lot of things, but there were some reasons that we were making that change. And so we kind of had to evaluate everything that their current system was doing, pull that over, figure out if it would work in the new system. If it did work, we had to sort of refactor it to, work with the new styles. And then we had to add on top of that, right? So it is a little bit of culling the old stuff and adding the new to get something that is still, cohesive. Sometimes they have to be huge, but like if you look at IBM or Apple or anything, they're like huge systems. But that's a big one for sure that we've worked on.
Do you think there's a project that's too small for a design system?
I don't think that any project is too small for a design system. I think it's what the effort that you put into making it could be a little bit different, right? Like if you have a single page website that you just need to say, this is the type style and these are the buttons.
Yeah, like a marketing page.
Right. It's very different than if you had something like Colonial Williamsburg. But the value is always there to document it in terms of saying, look, if we're going to make a new page, we have these buttons that are like nicely collected into this place, right? And so I don't think any project is too small. I think that you really have to assess at the start, again, like what's the effort that you want to put into it? How big is this thing meant to scale? How many designers will you have working on it? Things like that, which obviously will increase the size and the time spent maintaining, but it's always a good idea.
Sure. I don't think we've run into any situation where we regretted it, right? We just had to get into the habit of budgeting for the time to do the design system, finding a designer that could work on it. Because, I think that everybody in the end benefits from that documentation, including the client, right? Because there's a leave behind, a design system that helps them understand their type settings and sizes and weights and the palette that they used. That comes out of that effort, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, go to any website, use any product, right? And what you'll see is, hopefully you won't see the system. You'll just experience the thing, right? And so if somebody were to ask you, well, like, what's the system here?
Yeah.
You wouldn't know, right? And so to have that be in a place where you can go and almost, it's like Legos, right? You blow the thing apart into all of its pieces, and then suddenly when they're all laid out for you, it becomes clearer how you use them, right? It's like
such a beautiful mind.
Yeah, I know. See it everywhere.
You see them, but it's true. You can look at that and go, man, that unit would actually work really well over here.
Right. And Rob, I always remember this, Rob Green, who's director of brand here in college, he made a poster about Taco Bell and Chipotle and how, I think it was Chipotle, I'm pretty sure and so how Taco Bell could benefit from having a menu structure that's like Chipotle, right? Where it's really just 3 ingredients, right? You have meat, you have cheese, and you have a tortilla. And you can use those same 3 ingredients to make a million different dishes, right? But when you break it apart to sort of the system at Chipotle, is like, look, you don't have a bunch of menu items. You have tacos, you have a burrito, and you have a bowl, right? But that system is, well, I want a bowl or a tortilla, and then you're picking all the ingredients. So it's endless combinations, but it's the same stuff. And it ultimately creates something that comes from Chipotle, and it feels like Chipotle. So that's kind of the difference, right? Is that Chipotle is using a system. Taco Bell is as delicious as it is. There's no system.
No, there isn't. They're trying to convince you that every product is a unique, special
type
thing
of
on the menu. Let's talk about trends in design right now. I know that tools are always a hot topic of contention on what tool you should be using. So if you're building design systems, and maybe we can say at Mobelux, the way that we're building design systems now, what are the preferred tools that you're using?
Yeah, so we at Mobelux are using Figma now as our primary design tool. It effectively allowed us to kind of cut out, 3 tools and use one instead. In the past, we would use Sketch to do the actual design. We would use InVision to sort of host and screen share for client reviews, design reviews, things like that, some documentation. And then we would also use Zeppelin for the development handoff. And that is a perfectly good flow for a lot of people.
Those tools are great.
Yeah, and for us, I think just trying to consolidate and figure out, is there a better way for us to work? And we landed at Figma. Figma had been around for a while before we switched to it, which was last year. And the reason we like it is just because of how easy it is to collaborate. I really like the aspect or the idea that when someone is designing a view, they are working in a platform. They can share that link with someone on their team that's going to be developing it. And that same file is what the developer is using to get the measurements, to see what the colors are, because there's a little bit of, if you don't do it right, when you export things between platforms, like there's just a little like digital hoodoo that goes on.
Well, this is the dream now. I mean, 10 years ago, I remember we were building it. I just pixel by pixel making interfaces in Photoshop, and then I would export them. And I remember when GitHub Pages came along, that was a miracle. And we'd put them in there like a wiki, and we'd store everything on Dropbox, and we'd be making all these links. But now it's just one cloud-based platform.
And it's awesome, but it definitely it illuminates the need for you to be thinking about things as a system anyway, because with so much freedom and so much flexibility, it's kind of like you can make it whatever you want, which I like about design and organization. It's the same reason I find writing stuff in like JavaScript very hard, because you're basically like, make it up. And with this, like, it enables you to do a lot and kind of create your own rules to fit your own organization and the way that you work. So The collaboration aspect of it has been unbeatable, honestly, with other tools that I've seen. And everybody's trying to work towards that model. Like Sketch has Sketch Teams now, I think, and Adobe XD is doing stuff. So there's a lot. The important thing is that everybody is moving in this direction, which is like to make life easier for the people designing and building this stuff. And so it's really just on us to use those tools to actually make it organized.
Yeah, and the time savings to not accidentally lose a file or the naming scheme got in the way and somebody's on version 1 when you're on version 2.3, like when you're billing by the hour, those kinds of mistakes, they can cost, literally cost your organization money. So being able to take points of failure out of the stack is a big deal. And I think that it's led towards us getting things done more accurately and better quality.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. It's definitely been a game changer to not have to go dig in in either Dropbox or Drive to find a file, to download it, to pause syncing on your computer. It's all there. It's web-based. So that things are going to be rendering really well. And it's cutting out a lot of these little things that you got to go and like check back on to make sure that stuff is being implemented as it should. So it's been really good for us so far. It's
really wild to me that the browser has gone from being the bane of every developer's existence in a way to being the boon. I mean, entire code editors are now written on the back of different web frameworks. These design tools that are accurately rendering to the pixel. It's pretty amazing to me.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about just the two sort of applications that I use the most every day would be Figma and Slack, and both of those are web-based. And honestly, you don't need to have the app. The app is like,
you just need 16 gigs of RAM to do anything. I mean,
if
it wasn't for that, if we could
true.
Figure out how to get over that hill, I think the world would change again.
Yeah.
Because you could do more with less computer, with less processor.
Right.
But I don't know that we're ever going back.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. We'll see. I mean, I feel like people are revisiting old ideas with new perspective all the time, which is important because you learn new things, but sometimes you can learn a lot from mistakes or successes that you've made in the past too.
So I think I want to talk a little bit about the state of the world and how it's impacted us, how COVID has impacted work at Mobelux, right? Because we were very used to being all together. We come in every day, we're booking conference rooms, we're sitting next to each other. And now we're in a world where we're 8 feet away right now.
Right.
And we don't know what collaboration on the design team is going to look like going forward. So how do you feel about it coming back together? Like, what does the future look like for design right now?
The future for design is interesting. I don't know. I don't know what it looks like, but in the now, I was concerned in the beginning, right? Because like every company that wasn't a remote company, we were doing something different and quickly, right? It wasn't like we had time to say, okay, well, we're going to be doing this. It was just one day we made the decision and it was the right decision. But that in and of itself was kind of nice because it forced everyone to really be sort of with it, right? And highly communicative and almost even more collaborative than we already were because everybody is kind of missing that connection. So I think that it makes you want to reach out even more and communicate. And so I am just incredibly happy that we switched to Figma prior to all this happening because it hasn't been as drastic of a thing to get used to, right? And so while I do miss being here and being able to talk, face to face, our efficiency has not suffered at all, and effectiveness has been really good.
We are on paper more efficient than we've ever been as a company,
Right.
remotely, which shocked me. 3 months went by, 4 months went by. I thought it was a fluke, but it is working.
Yeah.
But what about ideation? What about sitting in front of the whiteboard?
Yeah.
Like, is there any direct replacement for that?
No, I think that it's that is something that I miss a ton about being face to face, just being able to grab a room, is going to the whiteboard and just like sketching out some really goofy stuff real quick, erasing it, starting over. But we're managing by just having more communication, right? I think instead of fewer meetings where it's like, all right, we're going to schedule this sort of whiteboarding session tomorrow, there's a lot more impromptu stuff because you don't have to reserve a room, things like that. So we're still using Figma to try and it's just turned into less of drawing on the board with your hands to scribbling pictures and taking pictures of that and sending it to Slack, or just using your mouse to draw within Figma. And so while the execution is different, we're trying to fill that void and still not lose that aspect of it.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of tools out there that are whiteboarding tools, but that's just such a hard thing to replace.
None of them feel right.
Yeah, because there's something about using your hand to let your mind speak.
For me, it's looking around the room when I put something up.
Yeah.
And seeing people's eyes immediately go, that is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. I need to see that. And if I don't see that, I almost I don't see any value in doing it that way anymore.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely something that we're trying to work through and maintain early collaboration, right? I mentioned earlier about how the hardest part about working at a digital agency is figuring all this stuff out, sometimes on a truncated timeline.
Yeah.
Because there's lots and lots of complicated decision-making and models that go into something that is seemingly simple, right? And you don't know that until you basically hash it out. And the only way to do that is to have those sort of informal, look, we're not trying to solve this thing right now. We're just trying to figure out all the things that we don't know and potential ways to solve it, for when we get to that point. So those kinds of conversations have been happening still. It's just, we got to be, really on in order to.
Well, I mean, really, literally on. We instituted a policy early on when this happened that when the meeting happens, the camera's on them.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to try to at least see each other. I think that's a big deal.
Yeah.
I think you can get by, but as anybody that's been in an hour and 45-minute long conference call can tell you, voice alone does not a meeting make. There's something else. And as much as we complain about Zoom and Google Meet, seeing people is still a big deal.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, people don't want to live, well, not some people do, but not everybody wants to live in isolation. I think seeing faces in sort of, connected to the voice or voice connected to the face is, it's important just to remember kind of who you're working with and that personal connection, which is so important because again, it's a team effort and everybody's got ideas to bring to the table, areas of expertise. And if we forget who those people are, behind that, and we just start, using it as I'm just hearing a voice telling me something to do, you put less stock in that. And that's something that we haven't had an issue with. And I think it's largely thanks to that policy of when you're in a meeting, cameras on, we're trying to make this as, normal as possible. And I think every day that goes by and the more that we do it, the better it feels and sort of more natural. And so I think honestly, whenever things do go back to being able to sort of be face to face, desk, chair by chair situation, this probably will have improved our communication a lot. So that's a weird sort of silver lining to this whole thing.
Cool. Anything else to add?
No.
That's
This
pretty
was
good.
fun.
Yeah. Cool. This has been 24 Point, a Mobelux podcast. If there's a topic you'd like to hear us cover in a future episode, leave a comment below. And if you'd like to hear about future episodes, subscribe to our YouTube channel or sign up for our newsletter at mobelux.com. Thanks for watching.